Hello, my friends. Today, let's jump straight into a weekly recap. It's estimated that the Ukrainian forces have managed to take control of around 460 square kilometers of Russian territory, while the gray zone covers approximately 703 square kilometers, which is a significant achievement. On the other hand, the Russians have captured nearly 94 square kilometers, which unfortunately is also a considerable amount. Previously, the Russians were capturing between 20 to 50 square kilometers per week, but now it's almost 94. Overall, the front line is shifting both into Russian territory and deeper into Ukraine, with the Russians getting closer to the Dnipropetrovsk region each time. Now, let's move on to the Kursk direction. Here, the Ukrainian forces continue to advance. Of course, the pace has slowed down. The Russians have managed to pull together a large number of reserves and are trying to halt the Ukrainian forces' progress. So, advancing dozens of kilometers a day is no longer available. And the battles for each settlement is intense. However, as we can see, the Ukrainian forces are still pushing the Russians out of their towns, and they are gradually retreating because there are no well-prepared defensive lines here. Today, the Russians are trying to rapidly create a defensive line in the area of Lvov and the Kursk nuclear power plant. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian forces are not only advancing toward Lvov, the Ukrainian forces are also making efforts to push forward near the village of Komarovka. Today, the Ukrainian side officially confirmed that the village of Apanasivka has been brought under their control. Here, the Ukrainian forces have made significant progress, advancing by 7 kilometers and 300 meters. Otherwise, the fighting continues, and there have been no new changes overnight. And the head of the Sumy military administration said that this is just the beginning. The offensive in the Kursk region is only the beginning. You will see several more stages of this operation, stated the head of the Sumy military administration. He also added that the Ukrainian forces are capturing over 100 to 150 prisoners of war daily. It's still unclear why someone is trying to rebuild the general staff's plans again. President Zelensky also mentioned that the Ukrainian forces are creating a buffer zone in the Kursk region.
Основне завдання наших оборонних дій загалом – знищити якомога більше російського потенціалу війни і проводити максимум контрударної роботи. Зокрема, це і створення буферної зони на території агресора, наша операція в Курській області. Все, що завдає втрат російській армії, російській державі, їхній оборонці та їхній економіці. Все це допомагає нам не допускати розширення війни та наближати справедливе закінчення цієї агресії.
But in the Pokrovsk direction, the situation is deteriorating not just daily but hourly. The Russians have begun intensively shelling Myrnohrad. Late last night, there were reports of strikes on Pokrovsk. As a result, Vereshchuk is urging people to evacuate from Myrnohrad, Pokrovsk, and Svatove and the surrounding areas. It's becoming clear that strong defensive lines are not in place and the Russians are advancing quickly. The storming of these large cities seems to be only a matter of time. Today, only a miracle could stop the Russian advance here. The Russians are already making significant progress toward Myrnohrad, which is just 1 kilometer from the settlement of Novoiehorivka. Meanwhile, the battles for Vozdvizhenka continue, but there have been no new successes for the Russians. fighting is also ongoing for Mykolaiivka, Novoiehorivka, and Hrekivka. The Russians are already attempting to enter and secure positions in the settlements. Additionally, the situations around Svatove is worsening due to the capture of 4 settlements, as the Russians are actively moving towards this area and conducting numerous shelling attacks. Overall, the Russians continue to carry out up to 50 assaults per day. So far, there has been no success in stopping them, and foreign analysts assessing the situation suggest that Ukraine's general staff's plan hasn't worked. The Russians were supposed to ease the pressure on the Pokrovsk direction, but that hasn't happened. In the Toretsk direction, the Russians are also slowly but steadily moving forward, and their activity, unfortunately, is not decreasing. Here they are trying to advance towards Toretsk from Zalizne, and the assaults on Pivnichne continue. Near New York, reports from Ukrainian positions late last night indicated that the Russians have already begun the assault on Nelepivka. The front line here hasn't changed in the past 24 hours. In the Chasiv Yar direction, the Russians continue to shell Kostiantynivka and Chasiv Yar while attempting to break through to the city. Additionally, the fighting for Ivanivske persists, but the level of activity here is not the highest. It's evident that this direction is not a priority for the Russians at the moment. All their efforts are focused on the Pokrovsk direction. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are currently assaulting Spirne, Vyimka, and Pereizne. The intensity of their activity has slightly decreased, but overall, the Russians are still carrying out up to 10 assaults per day without achieving any success. The front line remains unchanged over the past 24 hours. In the Kreminna area, heavy fighting continues near Nevske and the Serebryanka Forest. The Russians are still trying to push forward towards Lyman, but they haven't made any progress. In the Svatove area, battles are also ongoing for Stelmakhivka, Novoiehorivka, and further south towards Hrekivka. The assaults on the village of Makiyivka also continue. However, the Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling all attacks, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians are regrouping, with attacks only recorded near Berestove. Shelling of Kupiansk continues, but after recent advances, there have been no new changes in the past day. In the Kharkiv direction, the Russians continue to bring in reinforcements and attempt to advance. They are moving through the fields towards the settlement of Lyptsi, where they are being successfully repelled. Fighting for Vovchansk also continues, but as before, the front line remains unchanged. In the Kurahove direction, the Russians are still assaulting the outskirts of Krasnohorivka, but haven't been able to fully push out the Ukrainian forces from the settlement. Elsewhere, the situation has stabilized for now, with no new Russian attacks reported. In the Vuhledar area, attempts to break through to the city continue, with shelling along the front line. However, the Ukrainian forces are successfully repelling all attacks, and the front line remains unchanged. In the Zaporizhia direction, all attacks have ceased for now, with only shelling being reported. There have been no changes to the front line, and all previous Russian assaults have been unsuccessful. In the Kherson direction, in addition to the shelling of the right bank, daily assaults on Pishchanivka and Kozachi Laheri are now being reported. However, there have been no changes to the front line over the past day. Meanwhile, in the Rostov region, another oil depot has been during all day and reportedly continues to burn today. The strike was successful. Overall, the fight continues. And the Russians have stated that there will be no negotiations at all. The Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs announced that no negotiations in Qatar between Russia and Ukraine regarding mutual cessation of strikes on energy infrastructure were planned. The Washington Post previously reported that Russia and Ukraine supposedly planned to send their delegations to Qatar for such talks in August, but the plans changed due to the Ukrainian forces operation in the Kursk region. No one disrupted anything because there was nothing to disrupt. No direct or indirect negotiations between Russia and the Kiev regime regarding the security of civilian critical infrastructure have been or are being conducted, said a statement by the spokesperson for the Russian MFA Zakharova, published on the ministry's website. Overall, we are waiting to see how events unfold. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.